Good day. My name is Shem Compion. I'm a professional photographer from Africa and co-founder of C4 Photo Safaris. With a camera as my passport, I've been fortunate to travel to every continent on this planet. But Africa remains my muse. Today we're going to be talking about anticipating wildlife behavior. Again, you might think that is a very standard scenario to talk about, but there's nuances to it. Some that you might need a safari guide for, or learn the tricks and the trades of animal behavior and animal storytelling to anticipate behavior, but others where you are the protagonist. You should be the one taking control. And that's what I want to delve into today. Anticipating wildlife behavior is probably one of the most important aspects of being a wildlife photographer. And I'm going to run through 3 different scenarios here that will help you to get better photographs when you're out in the field photographing wildlife in Africa. The first one I want to talk about is the experience of wildlife behavior. And that's an interesting one because this is the one where time in the field creates value. And by that I mean being out in Africa on safari means that you are learning about the different behaviors that give animals away. When I say giving animals away, I'm talking about how you can anticipate and project where you should be in front of the animals and predict their movements. So there are certain behaviors that animals do, like a bird of prey sitting on a branch that will always poop before it flies off. That's a simple behavioral trait that gives you a moment's notice to know that you're going to get that bird taking off in flight. What I'm going to talk about here is big cats and leopards in particular. So let's delve into it straight away. Here we have the most soporific leopard in the history of humankind and the history of wildlife behavior. Fast asleep on a stump. Coincidentally, he's also on probably the most photogenic scene I've ever seen in my whole life. The light was shining beautifully like a spotlight onto his face with a lovely dark background. So photogenically, this guy was incredible. But along came a porcupine. And this leopard was sitting on this log, or lying on this log, in a dry riverbed in Mashatu, Botswana, when this porcupine came out into the dry riverbed behind us. Now, knowing both species quite well, I knew 2 things. One, it was dusk, and the porcupine was going to go eat at the roots of the trees that were coming out of the dry riverbank. And 2, that the leopard, being a young male leopard, would be very, very curious. And so a moving object like a porcupine, even though it's dangerous in this instance, would be irresistible to the leopard. And so we prepared ourselves immediately for action because this soporific leopard went from being almost half dead to alert in the matter of 10 seconds once it saw this porcupine. And even though there was imminent danger, porcupine is a dangerous creature. Most predators actually try to avoid them, or they learn their lessons very quickly. But because we knew that this guy was a young tomcat, just moving out of his natal territory and into his own territories that he was looking for, I knew that there was going to be some serious action. So we prepared ourselves as fast as possible to get as close to the porcupine without biasing the situation, get the lights up because it was getting quite dark. And then we encountered one of the most spectacular wildlife sightings that I've ever seen in my whole entire life. This photograph was taken on the 1st of May 2009 and still remains probably the highlight of my photographic career. All because we anticipated these first few moments. If we weren't there for that first bit of interaction, we would have missed the whole sequence because it died down so quickly after that. The whole interaction was 10 minutes. But of course the leopard lost its enthusiasm once it got stabbed the first few times. So this first interaction was gold for us and we had to be there. And that was the key. Anticipating the behavior of these 2 species together just by knowing them. And so never discount the value of a good safari guide on safari. You're going to learn so much that you can apply the next time you take a photograph. You want to know the end? The leopard lost interest. Why? Because he had spine after spine in his paw. And that's a stalemate for him, but a gain and a success for the porcupine because it survived for another day. So the next anticipation type of behavior I'd like to talk about is be curious. When you see something that you don't understand or don't know about, ask questions, delve into some research. And I'm going to take you through a little story that by being curious, I managed to get some really great photographs from. It was something really innocuous, something called a snipe. There's a nature reserve near where I live, literally 15 minutes drive from my house, 3,000 hectares, 6,000 acres in size, and it's a grassland reserve, preserved because it's a catchment area of water. And I used to go and spend some time there. One afternoon, I went there and I observed snipes, which are fairly regularly seen, but I didn't know too much about them. But what I did notice about them is that these birds were drumming, and I'd heard about this behavior before. And if you see on this photograph here, its extended tail feathers are held very stiffly out when it's flying, and they actually vibrate and make a drumming sound. It's so impressive, it sounds like a jet airplane. And they do this over the courtship area and over the nesting area of where they want to breed. So that evening I went back to my house and I researched about snipes and drumming. And I learned that these birds had no information. In the Bible of bird behavior called Robert's Birds of South Africa, there was absolutely no information on their breeding, their courtship, copulation, nesting, nothing. And so by being curious, I embarked on this project. And that's what led to a 6-month project of me photographing these birds every single day in the early mornings. It was 15 minutes from my house, so I was able to plan around it, and generally I was home every day before 8:30 in the mornings. So through the breeding cycle, I've photographed and stalked them out. I was using outdated equipment now. I was using a D200 camera, very old camera, but fieldcraft, being curious, a bit of perseverance and patience allowed me to eventually see and get the courtship displays and the full behavior of the nesting cycle that was observed and documented by myself. And so I then investigated who should I speak to about these series of photographs that I'd taken. I knew not much about snipes and the academic side of it, so I sent it through to some magazines, and immediately they picked up on it, that there was so little information about these birds that they decided to put an article up. And the cherry on the cake, if you like, and the affirmation of the value of these photographs was that the text was done by Professor Phil Hockey, who was and is probably the preeminent wading bird expert in the world. So that was a great plus to just being a photographer who is curious. Inspect, observe, and be curious about your surroundings, because that is what makes great photographers in the end. And then lastly, I want to talk about something very special when anticipating behavior, and that is to be confident. Now, I don't just mean being confident and gung-ho and going out and getting in the face of a subject. Be confident in your ability to focus on getting a specific shot. And in this presentation, I want to talk to you about, I want to show how spending one afternoon trying to get one photograph resulted in getting a great photograph, but foregoing many others, just by having the confidence to do so. And so we go back to the meerkats, a favorite subject of mine, and one that I've developed a decent portfolio of over the course of time. I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in the Kalahari, where I've had to observe these meerkats sunning themselves in the winter sun around their den sites. And in the winter, when it's really cold, they spend a lot of time around these den sites, which makes for great behavioral shots because they're just trying to get warm. They're very cute animals, they are extremely charismatic animals. And so over the course of time, I built up a fairly decent portfolio of these furry little creatures, which I regard as one of my top 3 subjects to photograph, simply because they are so charismatic. This is probably the signature photograph I have of meerkats. It did very well in the competitions, and I think you can say that I've got a strong enough portfolio of images of meerkats so that when I went photographing again, I thought, how can I get a different photograph? Because I've got a strong portfolio of images. And now I need to try and get something unique, something different, something I don't have, but something that's going to stand out. And so one whole afternoon I spent with a wide-angle lens and a fisheye. And that's the only 2 lenses I used to try and get a specific shot. I wanted to get one of these cubs really close, peering into the lens and engaging with the viewer. And so I foregoed all the other types of photographs I could get, the nice standard portraits, the digging in the sand, the cuddling photographs, the cute photographs. In other words, I gave up the opportunity of getting a 4-star photograph or a number of 4-star photographs in order to try and get a 5-star photograph. And that takes a lot of confidence to have as a photographer. You really need to focus hard on your goals and be confident that you are not missing too much, because you can't just whip up another lens. By the time you've done that, the image would have gone. And so it's a strong discipline to have as a photographer. But being confident allows you to get that one photograph that you can get. And this is what I was looking for in that day. And it was right at the end of the day, of course, last light. So I was very fortunate that that occurred like that. So I don't want it to be about my photographs here. I want anticipation of behavior to be about an exercise that you can have and you can learn from and gain knowledge. Be confident when you're out there. Learn animal behavior. It works so well in you predicting photographs and getting great shots from that. And be curious. Being curious is the greatest asset any photographer can have, because it results in great photographs. Thank you for joining another C4 presentation. I hope to see you on another one soon. Thank you.